have Carmen here. So can we give Carmen a round of applause? And if you could just sit down because of the camera and the microphone. We didn't even start our cameras yet, but we will.
All good. Hey, everyone. Hey, heck of an introduction. Yeah, John, thank you so much for inviting me out here. Thank you guys in advance for listening. I'll try not to put you to sleep. But no, I went through a lot of things before I got to where I'm at, and yeah, I would love to share how this came to be and how I came to have a family and a home and dogs and cats and children. And you know, a lot of people don't realize when they meet me now who I was or where I came from. And I'm grateful for that. I'm thankful for that. Even with my outer appearance, I took a lot of my old lifestyle with me through that. And yet I'm still able to move past it through God. So back in the 1980s, it was 1987, there was a house party in South Philly. It's probably cold. When you're cold and you like to do drugs and you want to snuggle up to somebody that likes to do the same kind of drugs, sometimes 9 months later, a baby comes. And that's the story of my parents and me. So I was born in 1988, and you know, it's interesting. Sin doesn't. I'm going to jump ahead a little bit, but I remember before I got married, some of the sins I was still struggling with. I would think, man, as soon as I get married, I won't struggle with that anymore. I'll just have something else to replace it, and this and that. And a lot of times we think like just some big event or something will change the sin in our lives, like maybe having a child will fix things, or you know, whatever the circumstance is, but it might go away for a little while, but it creeps up. And sin is generational. It gets passed down. When you have a child born out of something like that and you don't change your lifestyle, you're going to feed a lot of that into them. So some of you younger guys that maybe, you know, want a family someday, it's something to think about. I didn't grow up knowing about the drug use of my parents, and it wasn't anything that would be life-threatening. It was more party stuff. But a lot of the mentality that they had, I was raised in. Things that I heard growing up that was being bragged about was mafia ties on my father's side. You know, it's weird. Growing up, we'd watch documentaries and watch about how some guy got killed in Philly, tied to the mob, and they'd be like, "Oh, that's so and so, or that's your uncle so." And I'm thinking, this is cool. This is awesome. But at the same time, my parents were doing two things. They were glorifying this criminal lifestyle, but yet they pulled me out of the city and they wanted me to have a life in, you know, outside of the city life to be raised better, but yet they still glorified this sin. And I'm sure that's something my parents were probably struggling with. They probably never really let it go. And I picked up on that. So I strive to be these things. And the reason I bring that up is because it followed me for my whole life. If you go to meet me or just hear me talk, I'm not a bad guy. I'm not a tough guy. But I always wanted to be. And I hated when people would talk about what a softy I was, or, you know, I was always a big, stocky guy, and I could not stand when people would introduce me as if I looked scary and then immediately say, oh, he's harmless, he's a teddy bear. I wanted to be the gangster. I wanted to be what my father looked up to. I wanted to be what my mother looked at in my father. And I didn't know how to do that other than just pretending to be these things. So no matter how hard I tried, I just kept getting picked on. I was always this, I guess I always looked at it as being a weaker individual. So growing up, I got bullied a lot, picked on ruthlessly, ate my feelings. You know, we all do something to hide that, and gained a ton of weight, which did not help with the bullying. Got in fights all the time. Never really had any structure either. My parents got divorced when I was probably about 6, 7 years old. And during the time when they were still married, I saw a lot of violence. You know, it's hard. It's a shame we can't remember the good times as well as we can remember the bad times. When I think back on the times my parents spent together, I have images of, you know, my mother being strangled unconscious on the floor, or, you know, phone cords wrapped around her throat and beating her up. And it's crazy. It's crazy that was normal for a little kid to be seeing. And so when I was angry, I lashed out the same way. It got me in a lot of trouble. When my parents did split up, it was hard for my mom to keep things going. I didn't see my dad a lot. Even before they got divorced, my dad had remarried, or not remarried, had moved on with somebody else before they got married. So it was really just me and my mom for most of my childhood, and then the little bit that I had of my father. And for fathers out there, if you have kids, man, kids really look up to their dads. Even if you think you're a piece of crap, like whatever, or like you think that just telling them what you're doing is wrong, but then continuing to do it, kids see right through that. They want to be you. They want to be every bit as like you. And so I continued to grow up with my mom and not having a father figure around. There's a lot of things in life I had to learn the hard way. My mom worked a lot of jobs. I was being raised by whatever neighbor could watch us that night while my mom was working her third job. And through that, there was a lot of abuse, sexual, physical, things I hid in shame. I thought were my fault. I thought, we moved so many times. I think before I was 18, we had moved some 20 plus times in and out of the city, different homes. Sometimes before the school year was even up, I'd be, moving two times. And it was just a really unstable life. And that's something also that as a child going through I picked up on, and I carried it with me. I'm still struggling with a lot of the things from that today, and I'll pick up on that. But not having the stability, not having really good role models or a good understanding of what a man is supposed to be, I continued just to follow in the gangster movies I watched. I idolized, the movie Casino and Goodfellas and these guys, and then, any kind of biker, any kind of criminal that was getting over. I always wanted the bad guys to win. I wanted to be like them. And so eventually I got sick and tired of being picked on, and every time I moved, I got to create a new persona. I got to try again. And I was so sick and tired of constantly being the guy that just got abused, got picked on, and I thought I just got to pretend to be this other guy because I'm obviously not that guy. So I started doing things on purpose to get in trouble in school, which seems silly now, but it keeps building, this cycle of just constantly just making poor decisions. It might seem innocent as a child, but it continues to grow. So I started making friends with the bullies, bullying other people. I figured it would be better to bully and torment other kids than be the one being tormented. And it never felt right. It never felt good, but I wasn't being bullied. So what the heck? So I kept doing that throughout high school and hanging around with the kids that were always in trouble. You start stepping it up. You go up different rankings, we'll call it, in sin and in just criminal activities. You don't start out doing the hard stuff, right? So it started out being a bully, picking on kids, and it was, we got weed, we try this, and then, you're trying different drugs, and I was having a lot of hard times at home. My parents my mom didn't really know the drugs I was using and why I was lashing out. Plus, not having a dad around, a lot of lack of stability. Started seeing a counselor. They started prescribing me all different medications, stronger than anything I could find on the street. And I'll never forget the first time they gave me an antipsychotic for not being able to sleep, for insomnia. And I took it too early, didn't go to sleep, and I was high as a kite. And I thought, this is great. And I'm talking like 12, 13 years old when I was taking some real heavy medications. And it worked, though. I was staying out of trouble because I wasn't myself. I was a zombie. And so they started prescribing more and more. And I was high all the time. There's about a 3-year gap that I couldn't tell you a single thing that happened in my life. And it's somewhere in those years. And I remember a few times I tried to stop. And my stash that I stopped taking because I got so sick and tired of being high. I tried to hide my stash. Someone found it because I was afraid to throw them out, so I was hiding them under my mattress. And there was a big standoff between me and the police. And I just remember thinking, like, I really just needed help. I just wanted somebody to come in and hug me, really. I didn't know that. That's what I needed. I needed someone just to love me. And I'll never forget, the police were at the door trying to tell me to, open up the door, take my medicine. I fought it, and I break down the door. And here's this little kid, who's dealing with a lot more than anybody else knew. And the people I thought were going to help me, and this is not anti-police by any means. These men were doing what they thought I needed, from what they were told on the other side of the door. And I'll never forget the defeat I felt while they held me down on the bed, and they shoved the pills down my throat, held my mouth shut until I swallowed them. And within 20, 30 minutes, I was gone again. And I learned that getting high was a way to deal with your problems. I was taught that, whether it was meant to be or not. When you have a problem, you take this pill and you get high, and now I'm not getting in trouble. Now I'm being praised at home for not being bad or this and that. Well, when that stopped happening, or when I stopped getting the same effect from those things, you start looking elsewhere. And I'm sure a lot of you guys have experienced things like that. So then I start looking on the street for harder stuff. And I'm still a young kid at this time. So now I'm stealing medications from family members who are on hospice and dying, and whatever I can get my hands on. All my life was getting high. And then eventually I got kicked out of high school, had to go to night school. And, I don't know what good that really did me. If anything, it put me in with the kids who were the next level up, we'll call it again. And I learned how to make money. I learned how to do a lot of different things. And did not make any good choices, we'll put it that way. It got to the point where, multiple arrests at my house. Cops were very familiar with who I was. And I always knew that inside I was still that little boy. I was still, my dad's son. I was still my mom's little baby boy. But this person I was trying to pretend to be was all anybody else could see. And a lot of it wasn't pretend anymore. I was really becoming this other person. I just didn't realize it. And one time I got arrested. It was 3 times in a day. Really silly things. One was running away. I got picked up. I wasn't really arrested. I got picked up, brought back home. Something else happened. I got picked up, went back. I was just trying to get away from my house. Well, the 3rd time, the police came. They filed charges, multiple charges, and they took me away. It was out of my mom's hands. Whether she said I was going or not, it wasn't up to her. So now they bring me over to juvenile detention center. Now, around this time, my mom actually was starting to change. She had discovered a church called Calvary Chapel. This was in South Jersey at the time. She had tried to get me to go. I had been to church a lot. I knew about God. I knew the stories from Sunday school. I knew that David and Goliath, fought, and Goliath got his head chopped off. I thought that was cool. Right? I mean, it was stories like that. So I knew, but I didn't know. I knew the stories. I had no idea what they meant. But it was a foundation. There was something in there. God's word is alive, and it lived in me, whether I liked it or not. Let me back up a little bit. Right before that bad day, I did actually go to, this was around the time of the Columbine shooting, and there was a church that was doing a reenactment skit. The reenactment skit was very graphic, really intense. I had never seen anything like it, and I'm just watching kids just like me going through the school. A guy comes in with a gun and just starts mowing down people, asking them if they know Jesus. And then when they say yes, gunning them down. And then afterwards, it showed the people that died. It showed, them going before, like judgment, seeing if they go to heaven or hell. Not saying there's anything factual within this. It was just a depiction. It gave me a real clear vision of where I was headed. And I did give my life to the Lord that night. I broke, man. I knew where I was headed, and I knew that if I had died that day, I knew exactly where I was going. And I knew I was no longer that little boy that had the excuse of I didn't know any better. I knew what I was doing. And I accepted Jesus Christ into my heart that night. Now, I didn't fully understand what I was getting myself into or what I was really asking for, or that God wasn't going to leave me no matter how much I begged or tried to get him to leave me after that. But there was a conscience, is the best way I used to put it back then. It was like this. It was like a Jiminy Cricket I used to think in my mind that never allowed me to feel comfortable in the things I was doing. So a lot of times I would try and just go further and further into my sin to try and block out this voice, this spirit of God in me that was trying to mold me in the opposite direction. And I fought it, and eventually ended up in that night with the 3rd arrest. And now I'm in a juvenile detention center. Again, meeting kids who are doing different things on a different level. And those are the ones I flock to. Got a lot of fights, trying to just be a tough guy, anyway, this and that. And then I thought real hard about, changing my ways, changing everything. But then you get out of school, and everybody finds out you were in juvie. It was cool, right? So now I've got a bit of a persona to uphold. So again, I chose the wrong path again. And I just kept choosing this other guy that I really knew deep down I was not. When I was in that juvenile detention center, though, before I did get out, I was facing, I was about 15 years old. They were going to keep me in there until I was an adult. The day of my sentencing, I was waiting for my very Italian lawyer, who I thought, because he was Italian, was going to get me out of there. His name was Carmen. And based on his name, I trusted him. And I will never forget, you're sitting down in that holding cell waiting to go up to see the judge. I had written him a letter that was, God, I'd be embarrassed to read that now. I promise not to do this. I'm going to be a good boy. And, anyway, a lot of fake promises. And this other guy comes and he tells me Carmen's not going to be there. And I'm mad. I'm thinking, what am I paying this guy for? No, in reality, I didn't pay him a dime. I was a kid. Parents were paying. But I was mad. And this guy's telling me, Carmen's not going to make it, this and that. And I said, what about my letter? Did the judge? He said, I read that letter. He said, you don't want him getting that. I said, I'm mad. I'm just so mad. Because the way I thought this was going, I thought I was going home, back to my old life. I was going to start getting high again and do my own thing. He goes, what do you know about the Merediths? And I was like, what? And he goes, the Merediths. They go to church with your family? And I was like, oh, yeah, I know them. He's like, they have kids and this and that. And I'm like, yeah, I know them. I don't know who they are really, but I've seen them, talk to their kids. He goes, you're looking at two options right now. He goes, you're either staying here until you're an adult, and then you get let out, and God knows what you're going to be then. I mean, this guy was just straight up just giving it to me. And he said, or there's a chance the judge is going to let you go today in the custody of this family. I said, well, what about my family? Like, I want to go back to my family. I felt like, again, it was just out of my control. And even though you're in jail, you have no control. I realized that for the first time here. I wasn't going to talk my way out of this one. I was not going to just, this wasn't going to end today. So, never forget it. I go upstairs. There's my mom. She's in tears watching me, with the cuffs, my shackles and all that. It doesn't look good. And I really thought I was happy about that at first. I thought, man, that's going to win it over and she's going to take me back. As soon as I get out of here at the Meredith, she'll take me back. She's going to feel so bad seeing her baby like this. No, not at all. I see the Merediths there. And I had no idea that they have been talking about this, while I was in there, for a while. And David and Lisa Meredith were praying about taking me in. And this wasn't just released into their custody. They adopted me. I was taken away from my family. I was not allowed to be released back to my mother. I was actually sentenced. Well, first the judge, this was funny. The judge goes, Carmen, yes, sir. Yes, Your Honor. He goes, are you a Christian? Would you consider yourself a Christian? I'm thinking, this is a weird question for a courtroom. I said, yes, sir. Because again, I'm trying to just be this upstanding young man that's going to be released today. Yes, sir, I am. So you don't have any problems with anything revolving around the Christian religion or the belief and going to church, things like that? I said, no, Your Honor. So he starts telling me about this opportunity to go live with this family, and they're going to have full custody of me, adoption, the whole 9 yards. And he said, if I let you out today, he goes, you have to follow some guidelines. I said, yes, sir, yes, sir. He goes, you're going to have to go to church every Sunday. You're going to have to go to a mission trip in Mexico in a few months. And you're going to have to abide by all the rules in the Meredith household. You okay with that? I'm thinking, oh, okay, this is going to be easy. Absolutely, Your Honor. You got it. He tells me if you don't, you're coming back here to serve the full sentence, which was like 3 years. I said, okay. And again, I'm thinking I'm going to skate through this like anything else. So I go home with the family. Their oldest, Adam Meredith. I was like, this goofball, man. Everybody was such a goody two-shoes in this house. Adam's walking around playing guitar, worship songs. The kids are all like just getting along, and there's youth group things going on at the house, and I'm like, this is so weird, but whatever. I'm out. I'm free. And then I go back to school, and that's what I was touching on before. And it's like I had these two lives. I had one life at home where I'm like trying to give them whatever they want to hear and do whatever they want me to do to like look like I'm doing good. And then at school I'm bragging about going to juvie and this and that, and being the tough guy, getting high any chance I could. Man, my mom, she must not have been very aware about things that were going on or lied to herself, because this family picked up on everything I did. Everything. If I wanted to go huff some gasoline outside, they knew that the can wasn't put back right, and they knew exactly what I was doing. And I was like, that's so weird. Any little lie I told them, it just didn't work. And they really invested into me. They didn't just teach me the story of Goliath getting his head chopped off. They talked to me about David. and why he was so important, being raised up as a man of God, the decisions he made that were both good and bad, why we look up to him now, why there is so much written about him in the Word of God. And not just David and Goliath, but the Word as a whole. They really taught me what it was to be a Christian. And as much as I tried to be this other person, the influence of those that I was around most, which was Meredith's, really started to have an impact on me. And this was probably the biggest foundation that kept me from being killed or killing somebody else later on in life, was that I really gave it my all. I started really changing. I started doing really well. I started really loving the Lord. But there was still a little bit of a surface level to it. I didn't really let it fully into my heart. But I liked the way my life was going when I was outwardly expressing these things. And I was starting to learn what they meant. And then, as all good things, that came to me, there came a point where I was bored of it, and the only thing I would do was self-destruct and sabotage. And so I destroyed it. I started picking fights with Lisa. I started just getting in trouble in anything I could do, lying to them constantly. And the big excuse was, I want a motorcycle, and you won't let me get one, so I'm moving out. And I was 18 at that point. So it was like, that was my stupid excuse. So I started sweet talking my mother, got her to let me move back in, got a job cutting down trees. And man, I couldn't figure out why these guys were working so hard all day, and I'm dying. I'm thinking, I just got to build up stamina. Well, eventually they let me know when I went out after work with them one day. They were doing coke. They were doing whatever they could. That's why they were running around and zipping all day. So now I'm making all this good money, and now it's going right away. And now I'm working a lot harder, but I'm back into doing drugs. Things were not going good. I was realizing that the path I was heading to, and I was making, even with the drugs, money I was spending on drugs, I was making phenomenal money for my age. And again, that voice, that Jiminy Cricket, right, that I used to call it, but it was God. I just didn't fully comprehend it. It started speaking to my heart, letting me know, you're not doing right. This is not good. This is not what I want for you. And I remember thinking these thoughts in my bed. I'm like, get out of here. Like, I'm a man. But eventually that voice won. And I spent all night talking with a friend who I know God put in place that night to talk with. And me and her just shared everything that we were going through. And by the end of the night, we decided we're going to Bible college, right? We're going to Germany. Cool. That was a weird conversation with my boss. Hey, I got to quit immediately. I'm going to Germany to study the Bible. What? Come on, man. Can you stay on for a couple more weeks? We're going to, this and that. I said, no, I got to do this. And, man, I was stubborn. Whether it was for a good thing or a bad thing, I was always stubborn. I would stick to what I wanted to do. And so next thing I know, I'm flying out to Germany. I've got no money. And I don't speak the language, obviously. And I'm stuck in this little tiny area with a bunch of other people who were out seeking God, or their parents made them go. And I really did give a lot of myself to this. And again, I let that foundation, that understanding of God really grow. I started learning how to teach. I learned that it was a gift of mine to be able to speak and teach, and that I was writing sermons, and that's what I filled all my time with. If I was reading the Bible, it wasn't just to read it. It was like, I want to read it and write down my thoughts, and how can I share this with other people? So I started writing sermon after sermon after sermon and sharing any chance I could, and I loved it. It was great. I was in this bubble. The worst thing I was doing was sneaking out to smoke cigarettes, right? Or cloves at the time. They weren't cool then, they're not cool now, but it felt cool at the moment. So, but that was all I could get my hands on. So that was like my bad boy thing out there. It was like, but I was like, man, I'm doing good. If this is the worst thing I'm doing is sneaking out to smoke, I think I'm all right. And I still fantasized about the other life. I would try and say, oh, I don't want that stuff. I would bring up things I used to do and say, but I don't want that anymore. But I was really just trying to convince myself. So I moved back home, and then I stayed at home for like 2 weeks. All my mother did was show me off. Oh, my son, he's doing so good. Tell him what you did. Oh, Jesus saved. Oh, yeah. And it was like, I just felt like I was just this trophy she's showing off. And I was like, this is getting lame. Like, I got to get out of here. I'm a grown man now. So I moved in with my buddies on South Street in Philadelphia. Christian brothers as well. But Christian brothers who were discovering the world for the first time, along with me, on our own. Does not take long for anybody to fall into that. And turned 21 shortly after that. And, if you're familiar with South Street, I was living on 6th and South. There was a bar on every corner and everywhere in between. Whole lot of fun things to do. So I started getting into drinking, back into drugs, things like that. And I met this girl. We've all met somebody that we're just infatuated with, right? And I don't know have you ever met somebody that you're so infatuated with that you'll be anything that you think they want you to be, just to be with them. So I had this new infatuation with trying to be everything I could be that this girl would want. Well, she did a lot of drugs and she partied a lot, and so I tried to keep up. And man, I was fully in that life again. I was back in there, but I still had that voice of God pressing on me. But it was partying. I thought, this isn't terrible. I'm just partying. I'm just having a good time. Well, then you start doing certain drugs that make you more angry, more aggressive. So I started getting in more fights. Started hanging out with some people that were, again, leveling up. Now I'm hanging out with people who are selling drugs and running around with weapons and things like that. And I remember we were in this bar fight, and one of the guys I was with, who I really looked up to. I was like, this guy's the real deal. He's a tough guy. We were in there getting this big bar fight, throwing punches. I'm like, this is awesome. I'm not even feeling it because I'm so high. And next thing I know, I see this guy holding his stomach, bleeding. The guy I was with stabbed him right in the stomach. And we start running. We're out, right? We're gone. Well, I started hanging out with this guy more. I want to be more like him. I saw that he had no emotions about it. I thought, I want to be that. I don't want to feel bad about something like that. This guy's the real deal. I want to be it. Started hanging out more, getting in more fights. He'd pull out a knife, stab somebody. Next thing I know, they're looking for the South Street Stabber. Maybe some of you guys heard about that. This was years ago. But still, I didn't realize the danger that I had around me. It didn't happen overnight. You slowly move into these things. The next step is always really comfortable. Nobody wakes up and does heroin. Nobody wakes up and just decides to start murdering people. It's a slow fade, right? But again, the people I was idolizing were so far from what God had for me. I was just missing the mark. But I was getting so deep into it that voice was fading quite a bit. I stopped hearing it as much. And I liked that. So fast forward, a couple months later with this guy I'm hanging out with. Now we're, again, getting high all the time, robbing people, doing whatever we can. And then a friend goes missing. And it was a girl he was seeing. I wasn't very close with her, but I knew her. Went to similar parties, hung out with similar people. This girl, Gina. Next thing I know, I'm hanging out in Rittenhouse Square in Philadelphia, and Gina's parents flew in from California. They knew where we hung out all the time at Ritten, and they came down asking anybody they could, have you seen my daughter? No, I haven't seen her. I didn't want to tell them, hey, your daughter's doing some hard drugs. She's probably passed out somewhere. So we just, didn't think anything of it. But we also didn't see this other guy in a while. Then he starts coming around. He doesn't know where she's at, this and that. I'm thinking, okay. Nothing weird about that. And then one day I'm leaving for work, and I see a friend of mine on his bike flying past my house. I was like, oh. He stops and comes over. I've never seen anybody look like this. White as a ghost. And he's shaking. He can't talk. Yo, calm down, buddy. What's going on? He goes, hey, I just talked to so-and-so. You're never going to believe this. I said, tell me, man, what's going on? He killed Gina. Turns out, this guy I looked up to, for whatever reason, was getting high with this other girl, and decided that the voice the sounds coming out of her mouth was too much for him, and instead of just telling her to shut up, he told her with his fists. And when that didn't work, he told her with a knife, about 30 times. So I'm thinking, okay, this is crazy. And he goes, I said, you got to tell somebody. I said, this was like a moment of clarity. I said, this is not a joke. I said, this is not about no snitching. I said, you got to tell somebody. He goes, I can't, I'm involved. I said, what are you talking about? So I find out he also took her body in many pieces, in multiple trash bags, and asked this friend who I'm talking to, hey, can you help me move some stuff? You got a license, can you rent a U-Haul? So he rents a U-Haul, has no idea he's transferring his friend's body with his buddy who killed her to his parents' house in Jersey, and they dumped the body. He has no idea. No idea. And I remember after this, I ended up helping him go to the police. That man is in jail right now. serving a very long sentence. But I remember it was another moment of clarity where I sat there and I thought, this is a crossroad. Is this the life I want to live? I started thinking about the people that I was involved in. People who were involved in prostitution rings, small time stuff, but this was the people I was looking up to. Guy who just murdered his girlfriend because he was too high to realize it. People who were in and out of jail, people who were running from the feds. I remember waking up one day to guns in my face because a SWAT team came in looking for somebody that I was living with at the time. I'm thinking, this is crazy. I've lost control. Something's got to change. But again, like before, I kept going through this cycle, back and forth into the sin. But I always remember those moments of clarity. Well, eventually, this lifestyle of being this hardcore guy and riding around with motorcycle gangs and trying to get affiliated, getting into more crime, I got real depressed. I wasn't happy. No matter what I did, I wasn't happy. I would say, all right, and I just kept shifting from everything but God. Okay, maybe I need more money. So I'd make more money than I could make now within a couple weeks, and I'd think, all right, I'm miserable. Well, now I'm going to go spend the money on something that's going to make me happy. Now I'm miserable, and everybody around me, I don't even know these people. I was just miserable. And, man, God will intervene in your life when you ask him to, and it's not usually the way you want. Because if it was, we probably wouldn't get to where he wants us, right? So I started doing better, started working in a nightclub, was around a lot of celebrities. I thought it was cool, sports guys. I was getting them drugs instead of doing them, so I thought that was better. And then eventually you start doing them too. And I said to a guy that I was working with, I said, hey man, let's get clean together. He's like, what? He goes, dude, I've been thinking the same thing. So now I'm showing up to work at this nightclub and I'm hiding on the 3rd floor reading the Bible with this guy. And we're doing Bible studies before we go sell drugs in the club. But again, God's word is alive. And as silly as that might sound, it was better than not reading. The word got in. And I was open to it. And eventually I had him move in with me. And man, this is just how crazy God works. God put it on my heart to ask him to move in with me and stay for a little while. He comes in to stay with me, and something happened. I got real depressed, and I thought, I'm just going to kill myself. He's home. We both get off at the same time. He comes home. I'm not there. And I drove to a construction site, a couple blocks from my house, and I'm just listening to sad music. I pull out a big pistol, and I put it in my mouth, and I'm crying. I'm begging God, please forgive me. I know, because I know what the word says. Absent with the body, present with the Lord. I said, Lord, I know as soon as I pull this trigger, I'm going to see you. Please forgive me. Please forgive me. I have no time. I don't know what to do. So I'm crying, and I'm pulling the trigger, and I've shot the gun a bunch. I know I'm right there. It's about to release. And I was just, the tears are flowing. And then I hear a voice. Carmen? It wasn't God. It was John, who I asked to move in with me. Carmen! I said, what? I pull the gun down. I'm thinking, what the heck? I'm wiping my face. I want to see me crying. Hey, what's going on? He goes, hey, I didn't see you come home. I decided to walk your dog. I got lost. He goes, how do I get back to the house? Man, if I didn't break down right in front of him again. I knew. From the moment I got that job, God was already working on this moment. And long before. Every time I answered that voice in my head, nothing bad came from it. I might not have seen it right away, but nothing bad came from it. So I came back to my house and I wrote a long letter to God, which I still have today. I'd love to go back and look at it and remind myself of where I was at. And I just begged the Lord, please God, if I fall after this, which I've done so many times, yank me out of this life. And I meant kill me. I meant let me die. Well, 2 days later, me and John are going to Camden to get high. I had let my brother borrow the car the week before to go skiing, or a couple months prior to go skiing, and he left the ski mask in the back seat. So we're driving down Camden, it's dark, and I said, John, go grab something back there. Now, meanwhile, I got 2 loaded guns and 1,000 rounds of hollow tips in the back seat. And that's just how I rode around. Not the ammo. The ammo was for a trip I was going on, but I always had loaded guns around me and just always ready. Well, John reaches in the back seat, and I didn't know what he's doing. He puts on this ski mask that made him look like he had a beard. I don't know if you've ever seen those. They're like weaved to look like you have a beard and like a big red nose. And I look over, I'm laughing at him. Well, cops saw us. All I saw was two guys going down the road, in an area they shouldn't have been, and one's wearing a ski mask. Next thing I know, I get lit up, guns in my face. Do you have any weapons? And I was like, there's a gun next to me. Like, it's loaded. I got a license for it, which I did, but not in Jersey. So next thing I know, I'm sitting down on the side of the road in handcuffs. They pull out my money. They pocket it. They're kicking me on the ground, thinking, man, this is not looking good. But I was like, nah, they're going to realize who I am. I'm that little boy Carmen. All right? I'm that little boy Carmen who just needs a hug. But again, I realized that's not what they see. They don't see the struggle inside of me. They don't see the good that wants to come out. They just see what they see in front of them. And I thought again I was going to talk my way out of it. And then I realized God just spoke my own words right back to me. Take me out of this life by any means necessary. And I knew in that moment I wasn't going home for a long time. So I ended up getting arrested with John. They're trying to tell me I committed all these other horrific crimes they were trying to pin on me. I had such little care about my life at that point, I admitted to everything. Rape, assault, crazy things. I don't know how to this day none of that came up in court. But I said it to get my buddy out anyway. It wasn't about him. It wasn't about the situation. It was just about just surrendering. I was just ready to surrender. So I'm in jail, and mind you, a couple days prior, I won a lawsuit that I had been fighting for years, and I got about 15, 20 grand that had just cleared in my bank. And my bail was like $120,000. The 10% was like $3,000 short of what I just got. I'm thinking, God, this is too good to be true. I'm going to get out. But I was like, you know what? That's my money. I'm not giving it to a bail bondsman. I'm going to stay in here. I stayed in there for a little while until I decided that, facing 80 years, which, they always try and scare you, but it scared me. I was facing 80 years. I thought, I'm going to go spend some time with my family. And I did. I told them to bail me out. And then got bailed out. And again, that struggle was still there because right away I drove my car out to Vegas, spent a lot of that money before paying the bail bondsman. Yeah, it's stupidity, right? You just want those things. So I had my fun in Vegas. I came back, and I was like, all right, now I'm going to do good. Now I'm going to give my life to Christ. I'm going to have a prison ministry. So I decided not to have a lawyer. My family was very upset. The lawyers in my family at this point, how dare, what are you doing? You're going to throw your life away. And I remember reading about the persecution of Jesus Christ. And he went before Pontius Pilate, and Pilate asked him, he said, because Jesus at this point was not defending himself. He was staying silent. And he said, why do you not defend yourself? Do you not understand? I have the ability to free you. I feel like that was my family. Don't you understand that these people have the ability to free you from this? And that's a lie I've been told my whole life. And what Jesus said after that is what I knew to be the truth. Jesus said, you have no power over me but what my Father has given you. And man, was that real to me in that moment. And I decided I'm not going to lawyer, I'm not doing anything. So fast forward about 8 months, I go in for my day of sentencing, get it down to 10 years is what I was going to face. And I went in going to plead guilty. Everything I had tried to get out of it, just with writing letters, speaking with people, it just wasn't working. And I didn't want to put up a big fight. So I thought, whatever. So I had my pastor at the time. I said, I'm afraid I'm going to cry. I said, can you stand by my side and just be with me and help me be strong? He said, yeah. So me and him go there, and I'm got all my affairs in order, and I'm ready to go to jail. I'm going to have my prison ministry, which looking back wouldn't have worked because it wasn't my rock bottom yet. Thought it was. I go in there, and the prosecutor that was so zealous to put me away for all these years got a promotion, and her last day was the day before my trial, or before my hearing. And this lady comes up, 9 months pregnant, glowing, super happy. Hey, I read all these letters that everybody sent you from the church. Listen, I talked to the judge. This is your first major offense. We're gonna give you a PTI. Now, those of you who don't know what that is, it's a pretrial intervention. It's basically your one last chance. We'll let you out today. You plead guilty to everything. You accept this 10-year plea, or this 10-year sentencing, but we'll let you out today. They told me, you do so much as crosswalk, you're going away for 10 years. I thought that too. I thought this feels like a trap. So I accepted it. And again, I'm home and I'm going stir crazy. I'm afraid to leave my house. I'm not allowed to leave the state for a year on this. And I thought, I'm going to screw this up. I've screwed up everything before. What can I do? I was like, I need a bubble. I need to escape. So I went and asked them, can I go to Spain? Can I go back to Bible college? Can I leave the country, not just the state? I don't think they're going to laugh at me. I got approved by the end of the week. I'm thinking, oh, well, now all I need is money that I just spent on Vegas. So I'm looking, and I'm like, well, I don't have much, but I've got this beautiful Harley. And I remember thinking in my room, I'm pacing back and forth on the second floor, and I was just like, God, how am I going to go? How am I going to go? And I'm looking out the window, and I saw the bike, and I looked away. It's like, no, absolutely not. I'm not doing it. 5 minutes later, it's up for sale for thousands less than it should have been sold for. And I was like, I just need the money. If I really want to go here, I'll do it by any means necessary. So I threw this up for a very ridiculous deal that somebody bought within an hour. Sent some guy out there. Anyway, they paid me. And I knew I was on the right track because they paid me like 10 grand over. And the lady calls me up and goes, sir, I'm so sorry. I bought, she was a buyer for a very wealthy man. I'm so sorry I sent you too much money. It was supposed to be for this classic car. And I was like, you know what? I'm on a good path. I'll send it back. So I sent it back and I'm feeling good. And I go out to Spain. And it's a little bit more secluded than Germany. And I had a different mindset. I was looking at everybody else as basically like on a better path than me. And I was, instead of trying to show off or be, a loud guy that got some attention, I just wanted to sit back and be quiet. And John, how am I doing on time? Am I good? Okay. Okay. Again, so many rock bottoms I hit. But only God knows that final time. And the final time I met about a week into spending some time in Spain. We went out to go swimming at by this jetty. It was like this, or not swimming. Sorry, we went out to go visit this lighthouse that you had to cross a jetty to get to. And I got about halfway across before the tide started coming in, and the jetty disappears. So I see two of my buddies. A wave hits them and throws them into the bay, and I'm laughing at them. And I turn around to go back. Well, a wave came, and I held onto a rock. It goes over me, and I'm laughing. Well, the water, flies back, and that suction sucked me in. And now I'm in the water, and I'm thinking, this is great. I'm swimming as hard as I can. Waves are crashing, tumbling. Next thing I know, I'm under the water, and I can't breathe. I come back up, and now I'm exhausted, and I'm right where the waves are breaking. And if I could just keep paddling, I'll be all right. And believe me or not, this is my truth that I have to share because this is what happened. I saw the stories of the Bible come alive right before me. I'm telling you, I watched Jesus walking on water. I don't mean he was actually there, but God just showed me his power. I saw miracles being performed that I had read, and I was like I was there. And I just had this peace. The Bible calls it the peace that passes all understanding. If you don't know, there's no arguing. When you feel that, you know. And I realized whatever's going to happen is beyond me. And I just let go. Next thing I know, I'm underwater. I'm hitting the jetty. I'm getting thrown up on the rocks. I don't know which way's up or down. My body's getting sliced up. My head is cut open. My arms torn apart. And I'm bleeding everywhere. But I didn't feel. I was higher than I've ever been in my life. Just on the spirit. And I'm thinking I'm dead. And I breathed my last breath. And everything went black. Next thing I know, I'm hanging on a rock. It was kind of like a concussion grenade if you see like the war movies. The sound was coming back. And I hear, hold on, hold on. And I'm hanging on for dear life on this rock, and I'm thinking I'm alive. I start throwing up water. Anyway, I come up, and I was like, I don't know why God just let me live, but I felt like I was born again. Not in the sense of, accepting Christ, but it was like this new life. And I realized how quickly God can intervene in our lives through nature itself. to bring us wherever he wants. I dropped to my knees, clothes ripped off, bleeding everywhere, and I just worshiped him. I wasn't ashamed. I'm singing and praising God with every bit of my being. My life changed completely that day. I no longer wanted that old lifestyle because I knew it was going to end up at the bottom of that ocean. I no longer craved that high. I craved a different high. God would put people in my path. I remember I was in Kohl's and some lady's tearing up. I don't know this lady. And I said something just simple to her, but God put it in me to say it. She breaks down, we start praying, and I feel that high again. When the Spirit takes over, there is a physical high that I was getting, and I was craving it. It was beautiful and pure. It was all I wanted. Anyway, fast forward years of following that and chasing that, getting involved in ministry with John, and starting to realize that now I'm on the other side of things. Now I can start sharing with people what I had been through and how they can also have the things that I'm having. God was blessing me left and right. Now, you don't just follow God and things get perfect. I still deal with the same struggles I dealt with 20 years ago. Same struggles, same opportunities to sin come up. But each step I followed God, he gave me a little bit more and a little bit more. If you're on the road to recovery still, or you're turning your life around, when God gives you an opportunity that, like for a responsibility that you might not feel comfortable with, if you pray on it and you feel like God is putting that in your path, take it. Don't be afraid, or do it while you're afraid. Do it scared. That's what I was told. Do it scared. Don't be afraid to follow God. God's not going to lead you down an alley to get jumped. God's not going to lead you into a building where you're going to get robbed. Bad things might happen, but that's not the end. That's not the path he's leading you on. So always trust in him. The things I was granted, I was given a wife that I did not deserve by any means. And later I was given 2 beautiful children. I have a boy, Thatcher, he just turned 6 years old, and my daughter just turned 4. Beautiful, innocent. And now I'm back where my father was back in 1988. And I can either instill the things that were instilled in me as a child onto my children. I could pass my sin on to them if I wanted. That's not what I want. Or if I just allowed myself to fall back in that lifestyle, whether I wanted to or not, I will pass that sin on to my son and daughter. And this cycle will keep repeating itself. But when I look back on the people that intervened in my life, the purpose of it was to help me break these chains, to break the cycle. David and Lisa instilled that in me. John would talk to me about that. We are breaking these chains of the past. You don't have to be who you were. You don't have to be who your father was, your mother was. You don't have to be these people. You could be so much more. And my story is not done. The blessings and the responsibility that God's given me, they're not done. Like I said, I still have struggles every day. But I know where the good things in my life come from. And that is the best thing that's ever happened to me. I don't deserve any of it. So anyway, I just want to say I hope that encourages you guys on whatever path you're on or portion of your story. Your story's not done yet either. It could change like that. It's up to you which direction it goes. So, thank you guys. If you guys don't mind, I just want to pray over all you guys here. Dear Heavenly Father, I thank you so much for this time. Lord, I know there were so many things I wanted to talk about, but I know that whatever came out today was of you, and I pray that whatever touched anybody here in this life, whatever message was received here, Lord, that it doesn't end here today, Lord, that you continue to grow that seed that you're planting tonight here in all of our hearts. And I pray that it flourishes in the men and women here tonight, Lord. And I pray that their story continues to strengthen in your name, Father, and not our own. Lord, and I just thank you so much for everybody here in this room, and I ask that you just continue to bless them. In the name of Jesus, amen.
Amen. Amen. Guys, let's give Carmen one more. Listen,